There is a prevailing theory that we need to know much more than we do in order to feed ourselves well. It isn't true. Most of us already have water, a pot to put it in, and a way to light a fire. This gives us boiling water, in which we can do more good cooking than we know. Our culture frowns on cooking in water. A pot and water are both simple and homely. It is hard to improve on the technology of the pot or of the boil, leaving nothing for the cookware industry to sell. The pot was invented 10,000 years ago, and a simmering one has been a symbol of a well-tended hearth ever since. I don't mean to suggest that now that you have been reminded of the age and goodness of a pot of water, you start boiling everything in your kitchen, but that instead of trying to figure out what to do about dinner, you put a big pot of water on the stove, light the burner under it, and only when it's on its way to getting good and hot, start looking for things to put in it. In that act, you will have plopped yourself smack in the middle of cooking a meal. And there you'll be, having retrieved a pot, filled it and lit a burner, jostled by your own will a few steps farther down the path toward dinner. There are as many ideas about how best to boil water as there are about how to cure hiccups. Some people say you must use cold water, explaining that hot water sits in the pipes, daring bacteria to inoculate it. Others say to use hot, arguing that only a fool wouldn't get a head start. Debate rages as to whether olive oil added to water serves any purpose. It does, but only if you are planning to serve the water as soup, which you may, but it makes sense to wait to add the oil until you decide. Potatoes should be started in cold water, as should eggs. But sometimes I find myself distractedly adding them to water that's already boiling, and both turn out fine. Green and leafy vegetables should be dropped at the last second into a bubble as big as your fist. Pasta, similarly, should only be added when a pot is rollicking, and stirred once or twice. Ecclesiastical writers on the subject point out that in the beginning there was water. All life proceeded from water. There was water in Eden, water when we fell, then the slate got cleaned with it. Water breaks, and out we come. The point, as far as I can tell, is that water has been at it, oblivious to our observations, for longer than we know. I recommend heating up a great deal of it, covered if you're in a rush because it will boil faster that way, or uncovered if you need time to figure out what you want to boil. As long as it's a big pot and the water in it gets hot, whichever technique you choose and however you time your addition of ingredients, the world, which began by some assessments with a lot of water at a rolling boil, will not come to an end. Julia Child instructs tasting water periodically as it climbs toward 212 degrees to get used to its temperature at each stage. Her advice might be overzealous, but it teaches an invaluable lesson, not about boiling, but about learning to cook. If there is anything that you can learn from what is happening, learn it. You don't need to know how the properties of water differ at 100 degrees and at 180, but by tasting it at those temperatures, you may learn something about your pot or your stove, or the spoon you like best for tasting. Once your water reaches a boil, salt it well. The best comparison I can make is to pleasant seawater. The water needs to be this salty, whether it's going to have pasta cooked in it or the most tender spring peas. It must be salted until it tastes good, because what you're doing isn't just boiling an ingredient, but cooking one thing that tastes good in another, which requires that they both taste like something. All ingredients need salt. The noodle or tender spring pea would be narcissistic to imagine it already contained within its cell walls all the perfection it would ever need. We seem, too, to fear that we are failures at being tender and springy if we need to be seasoned. It's not so. It doesn't reflect badly on P or person that either needs help to be most itself.